Alright folks, we're going to get started. So let's settle. Shh. I'm so sorry. Thank you children, and adults and everyone. Hi, my name is Mark. I'm from the Aus DeFi Association. I'm here with my colleague Arturo. He matters sometimes, sometimes he does not, like today. But we are all gathered here as part of the Aus DeFi Association meetup for June. This is all part of Blockchain Week. Hands up who knew it was Blockchain Week. Yes, that's it. So we were in Sydney, Brisbane was yesterday, great educational events and more now. If you don't know who Aus DeFi is, scan the QR code, you can find out more. If I'm in the way, then we can show you more later. But before we begin, let's kick things off basically with, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we gather, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I also pay my respects to their elders past, present and future and emerging. We've got some great guests here. Thank you to all the amazing folks that are here, from our sponsors like Fireblocks, from our amazing supporters like Matt, who was our community lead up in Queensland. Thank you very much for coming. Fireblocks, Michael Shaulov is here. Thank you very much for joining us. ANZ, DigitalX, Immutable, all the amazing folks that are here. Steve Dallas, next DC here as well. You're all amazing. We love you all. And our folks from Queensland, and every single one who I am not going to remember your, no, I will remember your names later. But that's why we've got name tags. So, just housekeeping really quickly, toilets are upstairs, do not go in any buckets here. Please go upstairs, level 1. You can walk upstairs or there is an elevator, okay? The next thing, so we've got a really, we are running late, so I apologise, but we're going to quick rapid fire through this. We're going to get into Fireblocks. I'll do some updates first. We'll look at something from Sensand, something amazing from our awesome sponsors. And hands up the Sensand folks in the room here. There's quite a few of you. When we first got started, it was half. The room was like Sensand and stuff, and now we've got more people that are coming to these events. So thank you so much for coming. That's a lie, but it sounds fun. We're going to talk about something called NotVault on a layer C protocol that Arturo has built. He's a bit of a gigabrain. It's all about ZK proofs, and we think it's going to be really cool Aussie innovation. Then we've got a panel and then networking. So thank you very much for that. So quick fire update. So if you can't see over there, this is recorded and we did it in Sydney as well. So Base, we worked with Coinbase. There was a layer 2 launch that they had in Sydney. So an amazing event there, and they're very open for people to build on their EVM compatible chain. They were also in Melbourne at Upside Down. Next thing, Crypto Lulu. Hands up here who knows Crypto Lulu. It's a Sydney Soho House style place where NFT membership gets you perks and access and dinners, and Arturo will give you a massage if you want it or not. Or maybe not, but no, it's really good. There's great talks and stuff there. There's a lot of learning, and it's not just about Web3, it's also emerging tech and AI, and we've got a new podcast coming out about that, which I'll show you later. Sydney had their event on Tuesday, so this is your Sydney brethren, and some of you folks might have been there as well. So we had some great talks on Fireblocks, and Shane's here as well, and Bamboo was there, and more. And then we did some national events. We talked about Monero. We talked a lot about privacy. That's all online. So Aus DeFi has a YouTube channel, so check that out. About 100 people online there. Updated podcasts. So instead of just on Zoom, we've got a really cool place that we're going to be in. So that's at Crypto Lulu. So if you're ever traveling through Sydney, let me know, so we can get you on the podcast if you're doing something cool. And then we had Rob Morris. He's a DJ. He's awesome. He's in San Fran now, hanging out with Tim Berners-Lee and BitSurf. If you know your internet history, that is pretty freaking cool. And then Crypto Lulu, the NFTs are there, so you can scan the QR code or you can talk to me. I can send you the website, but there's some really cool perks with that, and they do business memberships as well. So check that out. Aus DeFi. So I was wearing a really cool pink hoodie. I'm just going to grab it. One sec. These pink hoodies, or it can be any color, it can be black, it can be light blue, it can be grey, it can be white. You can tie-dye it if you want. You can even put the NFT on the back of it. But they come with Aus DeFi NFT membership, where you get other perks like early access to events and notifications, and even some consulting in there too. Then there's the Web3 Innovation Centre from Stone and Chalk, so that is from here in Melbourne. Where's my Elbaite folks at? Elbaite? Oh, we got one from Elbaite. Oh, okay, one from Elbaite there. We'll have you on the panel later, but Elbaite Collective Shift here in Melbourne. There's a few up in Sydney as well, and Adelaide, but it's basically about building bridging the gap between builders going to different workspaces and not sitting together. So if you're in the Web3 space, what more comes from when you're actually sitting together? Let's get to the interviews. Shane and Michael from Fireblocks, please come up on the stage. That's the mic.
It's reasonable to...
That is on.
It's okay in Australia to basically drink a beer while you're being interviewed, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Not at all.
But if you're a girl, you can drink bubbles.
Hello, Lisa. Hello, Michael.
Okay.
Can you hear me as well?
Yeah.
Are you sick of me yet? It's been a week, 5 days, it's a long time. I'm just going to ask Michael a couple of questions, and then we'll throw it to the crowd tonight. I think that's the plan. So it's my, I guess, great privilege to introduce Michael Shaulov. Michael is the CEO and co-founder of Fireblocks. For those of you who don't know, actually, we've got an auspicious sort of anniversary coming up next week. It will be 5 years since you started to provide secure infrastructure to institutions to go into business. 5 years. It's been some milestones since then. You raised $1 billion at a valuation of $8 billion. You and the team reached $100 million annual recurring revenue, and there's not many organisations that did that faster. I was just wondering if you could tell us, how did you get the idea? What was the genesis of it all? We're sharing one.
We have one mic. So, by the way, 5 years in crypto is like 35 years in any other space. I'm sure that most of you guys already know. Just as a background, I spent most of my career actually in cybersecurity, and been in the space for about 15 years until. In the previous company that I was working for, we got dragged into helping an investigation in South Korea. So there were 4 cryptocurrency exchanges that got hacked over there back in 2017 by probably North Koreans. It's always hard to exactly put the attribution. You always need to be careful because it's political and things like that. But this is like fairly accurate. So Lazarus Group, which is basically their nation-state actors. So we did part of that investigation, and what I think, our observation over that after we did that investigation was twofold. One, as some of you folks that have been in this space back in 2017 might recall, there wasn't really good infrastructure across the entire space for people to hold assets in a transactional way. So you had solutions like Zappo that will basically had bunkers across Europe and the US, and they will basically take your Bitcoin, and they have this very weird protocols that people run into those safes, and it was very cumbersome. It will take them 72 hours to withdraw your assets. Bitcoin price will fluctuate in those 72 hours. And we basically understood that we need to build a solution that is much more aligned with the use cases that, at least in 2017 and 18, we sort of view them as transactional use cases. Fast forward, I think we kind of hit it correctly in terms of, I wouldn't say that in 2017 or 18, I guess that DeFi will be big, or NFTs will be a big thing, right? But the fact that the infrastructure was set up to actually support all those use cases, that's what allowed us to scale massively and support a lot of the folks that came into the space to build and to trade and to do all the amazing stuff through 2020, 2021, and 22, 23, and hopefully for the next 10 years.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Is that okay? Should be good now.
Yeah, you're good.
You got into Australia on Sunday. We landed in Sydney. Since then, you've been to the Aus DeFi, first day of that. You've met with banks, with government departments, with Web3 builders, with crypto builders. What's been your reflection on the Australian market?
Yeah, so just to give you a I guess reflection even before I got to Australia and why it took me 25 hours to get to Australia.
Not express.
There was another option which was faster, which the direct flight from New York, but you need to sit 20 hours on the plane. So, the reality is that just to give you a pretty awesome feedback, right? I think that for us, and Fireblocks is a pretty global company those days. We have about 600 people, and we pretty much have people on the ground everywhere, right? From New York to London to Zurich to Tel Aviv, UAE, Singapore, Hong Kong, Brazil. Australia has been like super unique because, first of all, there is a huge amount of innovation coming from here in terms of I would call it commercialization of the technology, but the fact that in a country that is somewhat looks remote, and also, to be honest, the population here is compared to the land that you guys have is fairly small, right? The amount of innovation that is coming from here, both from the top end institutional landscape, which is basically the four main banks, and also the different projects has been pretty awesome. So one of our first customers was actually out of Australia, a company called ZeroCap that I assume that I don't know if there are people here from ZeroCap, but they've been our client since early 2020. And they can introduce us to the market. But I think right now we have about 100 partners and clients here, right? Which is huge, right? In terms of the concentration, right? Just if we looking at the, I'm not sure if, for example, we definitely don't have 100 clients in France. Okay, I'm not even sure that we have 100 clients or partners in London, in the UK, right? So the sheer amount of concentration, the amount of ideas, and I think that the progress that is being done from here is exciting and inspiring. And I think that although it's a fairly long trip, we are committed to continue and support the market.
And one more from me. I'm looking at Samira from Elbaite hiding over there. Samira's built an amazing crypto company. How long has it taken you, Samira?
We're in our 5th year. It will be 6 years.
Right. So I just think it's a sort of a nexus point. How many people you've got?
We're at 17. We're not
17 people, but that's a really sort of interesting inflection point.
Keep it like in that ballpark, because once you get to then you need to hire people like Shane.
No joy comes from that.
They get confused with the navigation.
Life's a choice between boredom and suffering. Choose the boredom. But what advice would you give? There's a lot of builders in this room. What advice would you give to the builders, the entrepreneurs, the people that are scaling out businesses? And this is away from a Fireblocks question. This is more of a Web3 entrepreneur question.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that different people building different stuff, right? And I think that the thing that I actually like the most in this space is that, especially when you operate globally, you have those messy and dark moments that one geography just goes down because you have a regulator that decided to go after all the exchanges over there. So you know which geography I'm talking about. But the really exciting thing is that you always have geographies or places where people are doing exciting things that just blow your mind. You're like, wow, how come people actually came to those ideas? So the first thing that I would say that made us successful, and again, I think every company should kind of evaluate their own path and what's working for them and what's not. And honestly, I'll be the first one that would say that there is not a single recipe for success, and it's very difficult to do pattern matching between startups. And I'm saying that not only on the basis of my experience with Fireblocks, the basis of my experience with previous startups, and also being involved in others. So, but the two things that did work for us is the first thing is really kind of taking advantage of the fact that crypto is global. So the fact that you can actually, in a fairly easy way, to reach outside of your core market and take advantage of the global network effects. That has been a pretty important driver for us. And the second aspect is really to focus on the customers, right? So I think that what really worked well for us, and again, we approached it a bit more on the institutional market, but we always thought about it as like, how do we make the experience simple? How do we make it consumerish? Even in our case, right? When you sell to developers, when you sell to COOs, or when you sell to head of operations, the solutions that came before us were complicated, and we were always thinking about how do we make the iPhone for what we are supposed to do. And I always think about, Apple is one of those really unique companies that was able to take an experience, and I have like a crazy story about it. In 2007, I was in the mobile security space, so I met with the senior executive of Nokia. I assume there are a lot of Gen Z people here that never heard about Nokia. but it was a phone, okay, that you can actually call people. Yeah. People will not text or So I met with their executives in 2006, I believe, and they told me, we don't believe that a smartphone will be a mass market application, right? They basically said, like, they already had a smartphone, by the way. They had a Series 60, and it had a big screen. It was like touch, and they say, this is going to be niche, okay? Most of the people will use basically the feature phones, and this is going to be niche, right? And that kind of shows you that Apple didn't really innovate on the concept, right? They just bought like an experience that was so good for people and the consumers, and they built the brand, right? And where all the other folks that were at the same place at the same time, whether it's Nokia or BlackBerry or people that we don't even remember exist anymore, this is where they fell, right, of doing it. And I always think about our business as, how do we make it such that our clients will forget that they're interacting with the blockchain, which is complicated, and how do they get something that is simple, where they're not making mistakes. And I think that there are different ways to approach this, but I think that the complexity of the blockchain and the consumerization of it has to be top of mind, regardless what layer at the stack you are operating.
Cool. I'll grab that. Thank you, Michael. A few questions from the audience. Mark, we good? Big man, you got one?
Got a runner.
I love it that the big man's calling me the big man. Yeah, that's great. So I'm just going to ask, as a CEO of Fireblocks, you obviously work on the intersection of various technologies such as like BlockFi, blockchain, DeFi, and cybersecurity. So how do you go about dealing with the cybersecurity concerns around DeFi applications? And in particular, how does Fireblocks go about dealing with these concerns?
Nice.
Yeah, it's a important question that we do spend a lot of time on, and I think that there are two. The area or the part in the stack that we are currently playing in is, first of all, to make sure that when clients interact with DeFi, they have, first of all, like a deterministic and secure entry point into the different protocols, right? This is where we started, right? This is, I think, what was pretty, pretty clear in terms of where we could introduce our solution. Then the second thing, which is what we're working on right now, is introducing, I would say, like heuristics, which some people call it transaction security. So basically pre-screen and get some, it's kind of like almost like an antivirus for DeFi to understand if you're about to send a transaction to a fraudulent or malicious contract. So that's, and there are a bunch of companies, there are probably 20 different companies globally that are developing different technologies and solutions for that. So the approach that we took over there, I can geek out about it, for 5 hours, but it's more like of an aggregation of that intelligence and kind of making sure that we pre-screen the transaction. But honestly, we did spend quite a lot of time internally on strategizing against how the future might look like. And clearly, there is an inherent problem with DeFi and DeFi, the broader sense, DeFi tokenization, and all of the stuff that it's almost like the first time that we are creating code that is deployed globally on a public blockchain, and that code is susceptible, well, that code interacts with billions of dollars that people want to go after, the bad guys want to go after, and it's permissionless, right? And that basically introduced both like a huge honeypot and introduces almost like an unlimited attack surface, right? And I don't think from cybersecurity this problem has ever been introduced in that magnitude in the history of IT, you know, whatever you want to call it, or the internet. And I think that strategically over a long period of time, and I'm not sure how much time it will take us to get there, we probably would need to find a very different model in which we not necessarily will be able to make sure that every DeFi protocol is secure, because then it will put a huge liability or restrictions on people to innovate. But we would probably need to put some security into the asset itself. And basically, you know, the view there is that the vast majority of the assets that we're going to interact in the next couple of years are unlikely to be the base assets, right? It's unlikely to be necessarily Ethereum, right? We will have stable coins and securities and NFTs and tickets and all that kind of stuff. So we can actually bring the security into the asset itself, and the security can be built into the asset, and the asset can basically protect itself from all the bad guys, rather than asking the developers that are building and innovating the different protocols to guarantee that they are secure.
Yeah. Cool. Time for one more. It wasn't the most manly run.
I know that you're going to try anything. Hi, Margaret Roosevelt from Cube, and thank you so much for spending time with us. With your background in mobile, you have lived through seeing legacy companies displaced by next gen again and again, 4G, 5G, when that happens. What are you doing internally with your team to ensure that they don't get into that legacy mode of we've got this?
Oh.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
That's, by the way, like, you know, very important thing.
Sack the old guy.
Yeah. So
I know, I probably knows it better than anyone else.
So someone told me a few months ago that we are the most with everything we got to, like, you know, we criticize ourselves more than any other company he ever worked in, and I'm like a really strong believer that the fact that you're paranoid doesn't mean that they're not coming after you, and I'm really working hard to make sure that our team is thinking this way every day, all day, and creating the sense of urgency. Now, you know, the reality, and I think, like, you know, we did put, like, you know, a bunch of functions in place to make sure that we are able to front run some of those issues. We have a pretty strong market intelligence team and competitive intelligence team that we understand if, like, someone is, you know, we are probably, like, you know, mapping out right now about 30 or 40 companies that are coming after us, and we know what they're doing, and, you know, usually, like, surprisingly, we usually know what they're doing better on them than they know about us. So, you know, just if there are people over here, just be aware. So that's, like, you know, one aspect of it. And again, you know, I'm not sure, like, you know, we know about anyone in the space, but we have a pretty good mapping, at least, like, you know, on our main competitors. And the second is we do have a pretty robust CTO team that what they do is that they're not working on the main products. They're basically just like, playing with new technologies and figuring out kind of what's the next thing. So even though Fireblocks right now is not, it's like, we provide MPC wallets, we already have a bunch of POCs and account abstraction and zero knowledge proofs and all that stuff that are ready to go when we decided we want to launch them. But it is like, a true challenge, because I do think that everything that I said probably was to a certain extent true to where Nokia was when I just, they probably knew that like Apple is coming after them. So I think that like, that the main thing is really to listen to the clients and to listen to the market and make sure where the market and the clients are, because it's hard to understand always where things are just like, pure innovation or nice gimmicks at a certain point in time, and what's going to be like a real issue that might come and disintermediate you, right? And I guess like, the way that I think about the last point is that we did raise a lot of funding, and then therefore we have not unlimited amount of bullets, but we do have a few bullets that if we actually make a mistake, then we can always sort of complement or basically front run the problem through an acquisition.
Thank you, everybody. Paranoia, bullets. I'll hand over to you, mate. Thank you so much. If you want to know more about Fireblocks, do
Very much. Thank you, Michael, for coming down. Thanks, Shane. Alrighty, we've got Sensand up next. I'm just gonna click up. Hang on, sorry. So there's a QR code for anyone who wants to scan that. And while we're doing that, we've got Peter up on stage next, along with who?
Arturo.
Not important. Alright. Let's go next. It's not going to be Francois, it's going to be someone else. Oh, okay.
Exactly what you say would know.
That's true. Arturo. I think you're up. Yeah.
Your team, 600. Okay, move to the middle.
Oh, okay, cool. Alright folks, so next up on stage we've got Sensand, folks. Shh. I'm sorry, I wasn't a school teacher, but I would love to have been one. Next up on stage we've got Peter from Sensand. Sensand is our awesome sponsor. We would not have these events if it wasn't for them. So give it up for Sensand. They work with Fireblocks as well. Everyone's amazing. And we've got, speaking of not amazing, we've got Arturo.
Peter, we've known each other for a while.
Hold it closer.
Closer.
Eat it.
Microphones again, mate.
And it's quite fascinating because we ran the first event together, right?
Yeah. About
It's
a
changed
year
a
ago,
lot.
almost.
Yeah, you can see a lot of progress. There's been an incredible amount of progress over at Sensand as well. You've hit a milestone. Tell me about that.
Hello, microphone. We've finally entered our beta phase. So it's been 3 or 4 years of development of this, and we just did our first couple of trades over the last week or so. So it was over 100,000 tonne of carbon credit trades worth a little over 600,000 Australian dollars. So, yeah. Nice first couple of units, but we're in a 3-month beta phase at the moment, and we'll be ideally launching in September publicly, commercially, as opposed to a closed beta. But yeah, first trades after many years of work and development, and yeah, we're finally turning on. So there you go.
Yeah, that's a really big step. Congratulations. we hit that milestone, and at the same time, I think that you think about many different facets, which is quite rare while you're running your business. We've been working together on figuring out how we can actually make the operations of a business more efficient. And obviously, we're talking about the application of AI. I mean, I think that, look, we speak to many different customers. And there are a few customers that really come to us and say, we want to transform the way that we do business because we want to focus on the customer. And we want to be able to offer, that very specific experience. What was, how did that come about, the thought of applying AI in that really special way that you wanted to do it?
I was listening to podcasts. There's a surprise for those of you who know me. The idea, the concept with AI was that we started working with you about 3 or so weeks ago on this. So we looked at what GPT was doing and all the generative AI stuff, and we thought to ourselves that if we utilize this the right way, we could materially make a massive improvement to the way that we use our work, particularly in the commercial team, just in the business, rather than inside the product specifically. So we wanted to have a system with GPT where we could have all of our own private information. It wasn't out of date. We could put all sorts of other stuff in it, but it would be context aware about us. So when I approached you, I was like, well, I think that we can have 5 or 10 people act like it's about 100 people in the commercial team if we utilize these tools the right way. So we wanted to implement that type of system to really augment the people that we've got in those teams and those departments. And been working on that for, 3 or 4 weeks with you now, and I think you gave us a testable version of it a day or so ago, if memory serves.
So, for everyone here, the idea is that almost every employee has their own agent. Every team has their own agent. And it's, when you say it out loud, it obviously makes sense, but it's not everyone that actually says that, look, we're going through everything that we're going through. You're building up a business, you're going through live trades, you're structuring all of these different workflows. Let's now do something that hasn't really been done before. I mean, that's really putting it at the forefront of the emerging tech space, I would say. Where do you have a view of, let's say, a year down the line? Where do you want this to? What does that look like?
I think in a year, the platforms will just make this all part of the system. But in the interim, I think that in our case, we're a platform, so we have a lot of different stakeholders and partners that we work with. So we would have companies that make IoT devices and sensors, there'd be carbon producers, there's brokers and traders, all of these different types of stakeholders that interact with us because we're not just a product serving one segment. We have lots of different things that we need to do, lots of different types of relationships and ways of engaging. So we took the view that if we wanted to try and do that well across a broad range of really different types of stakeholders, that we needed to have a really detailed amount of context about how each one of those groups work, and then needed to be able to scale that out without having bums on seats to achieve it. So we just wanted to really embrace the change that AI does and to really make the great people that you've got in different parts of the business scale themselves rather than having to have a leader and then 5 or 10 people under them that help them implement it. You put the systems in place where the agent can really start doing a lot of the grunt work, heavy lifting, with the decisions being made by the senior people with the best ideas or perspective in a certain section. So I think that this will become a little bit more standard over the next year or so as the technology gets more sophisticated, as it gets put into all the Microsoft and Google and all of that type of stuff. But we wanted to start that sooner because we're launching and we needed to have that type of functionality and capability now and be able to put our material into it without training the model and publishing a patent or something. So that's why we took the approach of just trying to build an internal version of it straight away. And given that we've got software people in the company and so forth, we had a faster way of being able to achieve that ourselves.
So this is a comment more towards the community. We engage with many people, both on the commercial side and on the community side. There are lots of very passionate people within the Web3 space, and there are a lot of people that have a very strong belief that Web3 is the only way and have a very specific view on what that means, something that we call maxis. I think that right now, comment that I'll make after the first day in Blockchain Week that we started to see a lot of institutions moving into the space is that many of these builders that were maxis have thought, wow, it's changing, right? And following on a couple of comments that Michael made before, it's really interesting how we start to see that businesses need to be businesses, and businesses actually need to focus on giving a really, really good customer experience. And it's actually quite hard to give a good customer experience if you're going to be a maxi. So I think that it's really important to look at companies and look at groups of people that are able to do things well. And in my opinion, doing things well is just figuring out what problem you're trying to solve, and then just trying to find the technology, not the ideology, that solves the problem that you're going after. I mean, if you look at, I had a demo today. It was quite fascinating because on the one hand, you see this beautiful user experience on a map with a lot of data that is being processed. Obviously, it's off-chain processing because you can't do ML on-chain. But then you identify the aspects of token transactions, and maybe tokens is not the right word, but the point is that there's transfer of value, there's tokenization of ideas, right? And that part is blockchain. But I think it's really important that we're able to identify exactly what tech we're using for what problem, and I think that you guys have done an amazing job with that.
Is that a question?
Well, I think I understand the question is like, thank you. But so, I mean, we've always been really big on the product, like the problem that you're trying to solve, informing what you use. So a lot of competitors or people that have been described as competitors to us took a different approach in the Web3 side of things, with Carbon in particular, and we had a really strong view that you can't decentralize parts of the carbon market for the sake of argument. So we don't use everything inside blockchain. We use the parts that was helping us solve the part of the problem that we wanted to solve, but we didn't go all out and say, well, it has to have everything, otherwise we're not in Web3 or something like that, right? There's a lot of really important things that blockchain does, and it simply made us think about it in a different way. And if we tried to adopt everything and not just take the parts that were there, then we were making the tool fit the case rather than the other way around. We always wanted to use the part of the technology that solved the problem that was relevant, and I think that there's a fair bit of that in the maxis. They always want to do everything in absolutes rather than just doing the right part for solving the right part of the problem. You've always got to come at it from the product market fit first, and then take the other approach. But I'm not we were talking about this a year or two ago as well, right? So it's not surprising that it's still sort of popping up even in the current market and ecosystem, but that's the way we always approached it.
Awesome. I'm being told to be quiet now, so thank you so much.
I know you're in trouble.
I know I am.
I left the microphone work the whole time, so.
Arturo is always in trouble, folks.
Thank you very much, guys. Fantastic. Did you leave a jacket up here, or I don't know? Free jacket. So we're gonna get to a panel next. There's a clicker. Where's the clicker? There we go. All right. And by the way, that was not Francois. So just in case anyone's confused, Francois changed appearances. That was not Francois. He apologizes. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Shane. All right, we're going to get to a panel. So can I get my panelists up on stage? Anurag, Ed, Lisa, Samira. Come on down. The price is right. Where's the music? Okay, no.
Oh, hang on. champagne.
Oh, hang on, champagne. We're going to be very COVID safe, and you guys are going to be passing mics around. So, all right. What's that? Yeah, have a seat. Can everyone see? Okay. So, first of all, from the stuff that we had before, absolutes. Only the SIF deal and absolutes. Anyone? Okay. And then, what the guys were talking about before, one of the key messages from day one of Blockchain Week that a lot of people latched onto was the fact that some of the big banks spoke about decentralization not mattering, or that was the takeaway that folks had. That was something that feedback from customers came back to the bank saying that they don't care about necessary decentralization, they just want something that's good. They want a good product. So the lesson for us working in the Web3 space is to make sure that we build something that is interesting and innovative and is better than the existing. Okay, so that's a key takeaway. But before we begin, can we get starting with Ed, just a quick 15-second intro, who you are, where you're from.
G'day, Ed Bunting, Immutable, Chief Legal, Regulatory, Risk and Compliance Officer there, so lots of different things.
Lovely to meet everyone tonight. I'm Samira, Tollo, CTO and co-founder of a crypto exchange called Elbaite. We are a non-custodial crypto exchange, so we believe that every day people should hold their own cryptocurrency in their own personal wallets, and that's what our exchange enables someone to do.
Hi, Anurag, Soin from AMZ. Day job is all around building stablecoin, asset tokenization factories, and figuring out how to reinvent the traditional ways of doing things in the Web3. In my introduction, I would definitely try to tell one thing. What got me into crypto is when one friend said that there's a very big yield available on a Polygon network. Go there, they just launched something pretty cool, there's Aave. And I'm like, yeah, definitely gonna try that. That got me into crypto. But when it got self-liquidated, because the price was falling, that really got me, this stuff works. So I've learned the hard way. So started from banking side, but now there's no protocol which I have left, which I haven't tried. I lost some money. So.
Crypto works even if it works against you. So, Lisa.
Yeah, I'm Lisa Wade. I'm the CEO of DigitalX. I believe I'm representing them tonight. I'm also the co-chair of Blockchain Australia, so happy to answer any questions about Blockchain Australia as well. And just a tiny little plug, because we're a micro cap and we're launching a new product before market tomorrow. Because the ASX is now closed, I can say we're launching a real world asset tokenization fund in the morning. That it's quite overwhelming because you can't build anything in this space without a shit ton of collaboration. So thank you to everybody here that has worked on it, and tomorrow will be a very exciting day for us.
2 shit tons of collaboration, folks. Lisa, I'll stay with you. Can I get your experience on, your experience leading DigitalX? It really offers a fresh perspective from, I guess, what we've seen at the start of the week anyway. Where it was very corporate.
Fresh is the word of the week.
Absolutely, fresh is key. How do you interpret traditional financial institutions basically adapting to digital assets and blockchain technologies? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh look, so many. In my experience at NAB, the big takeaway is I wasn't a banker, I was working in a bank, and for banks it's just process improvement, and process improvement is great, but that is the evolution of banking. It's kind of nothing special, right? There are so many different process improvements that can happen, and the true financial revolution happens in the investment space and the portfolio construction space, and how we can look at the infrastructure that we're building and how that transforms investment and the actual funding formula unto which all investment is super geeky. So I might leave it there, but from my point of view, in investment it's a financial revolution, in banking it's just process improvement. So the TradFi, they'll only ever see it as far, unlike you're like an anomaly in a bank, but they'll only ever see it as far as the process improvement.
Okay, and just, anyone in process improvement here?
We still love you.
We still love you, yeah, just saying, and on camera. Anurag, if we can go to you, as someone who's spearheading digital services at a major bank like ANZ. It's a cornerstone. Could you shed some light on the integration of these cutting-edge services in a traditional bank? How is this evolution impacting your core offerings?
Yeah, so I can talk a lot of fluff, but rather than doing that, let's talk what we are doing and what we have done, which is on-chain. So when someone sends US dollars to Aussie, generally in the banking system, how that works, there's a messaging layer, where a bunch of messages goes around which says, yes, this person is this, there's all that stuff. And then there's value transfer. So although a payment may seems like instantaneous to people, it's actually not very instantaneous. It may take 2 to 3 days to settle because today's banking system and financial system is operating on edge-based models. So it's basically an entry into someone's database in US and then someone's database in Australia. And the penny drop happened for us when we took our stablecoin and we pressed one button and there was no messaging and value separation. It was that 14 seconds of Ethereum block mining, and imagine if the blockchain doesn't decide to reorganize itself, then the settlement happened then and there. That was one penny drop, but more recently, a lot of people can criticize organizations and that's easy. But Swift took a very bold step where they have collaborated with 14 other big organizations and they're talking about cross-chain interoperability of transfer of assets, which is the most recent thing which we're participating in. And it's really amazing to see that all the banks, big organizations, they are realizing what is the power of the technology. Not in 100% of its form, I would say, but people are definitely acknowledging that and looking at it.
I've got a question here for Samira, but actually it requires Ed to answer your question first. So let's jump on over. Sorry, Samira, we're saving you special. So Ed, your work at Immutable, plus being at the forefront of navigating the legal intricacies of DeFi, etc. How many lawyers have we got in the room? Any lawyers here? Okay, fantastic. We've got an amazing one in front. Got a few others around and stuff. There's a lot of lawyers in this space because it is a regulatory minefield or opportunity field, whatever. But given that you're in that space, what key regulatory challenges should traditional blockchain-based institutions be prepared to encounter from your view?
Yeah, it's good to see the only lawyers in here are not necessarily private practice lawyers. Usually the reason they love blockchain so much is it's an opportunity to ram up some fees. But I'm no longer in private practice, I've been for years. I think that, look, there's nothing sacred about Web3. There's nothing so different about blockchain, frankly. When my kids go to the playground and trade Pokemon cards, which they do, no one regulates that, right? But it's very hard to get that message through, and I think there's a lot of FUD within the regulators. To be honest, it's a pretty tough job to be in government. You, apart from the fact your work hours are much better than others, you don't always get much saying what you get to do. A lot of the builders around here get to do what they want to do. A lot of different agendas, things change, your bosses change all the time, and so you don't have that huge depth of intellectual firepower. There are some really smart people in Treasury and governments in those places. So what I think you should probably expect, and what traditional players should look to do, is assume that the regulation should be tech neutral, and that you really need to have a look at what activity you're doing. So if your activity is something that has always been regulated, or really a sniff test would make you think it should be regulated, then it probably will be regulated. So I know and it probably already is regulated, right? So no one that I've really come across in Web3 that isn't some massive degen who's trying to take money off people is trying to do anything in a way that is illegal or that isn't lawful. So I think keep using the same sound thinking, the same reasoning behind what you do. Don't worry too much about what the law is going to do. We can't control that. Control what you can do, and assume if what you're adjacent to is a regulated activity now, it's probably going to be regulated in the future, and eventually the laws will catch up. Doesn't matter which country Australia follows, hopefully the UK, where they're thinking about these things properly, and that's the best we can do. So just use common sense. It's no different to any other industry.
Is anyone here doing anything illegal? Just check. Tax time coming soon too, so get that software, folks. Coinly, crypto tax calculator, Silo, etc. Samira, over to you. Given Ed's answer to that, as a technology maven, what a great, I don't know, maybe you should change your Twitter. Technology maven at Elbaite, how are you leveraging tech to address the regulatory hurdles that were mentioned?
Yeah, so firstly I'd like to address the word hurdles. Definitely it's our opinion that regulation is not a hurdle, but really it should be part of the core product. And there are several reasons for that, right? So the very first reason, regulation is there for a very good reason. It's there for consumer protection, and as a consumer-facing product, of course, we want to protect our customers, and so a framework that we can work around and follow is a great way to do that. And then also, I want to share an anecdote of how we have, throughout the 5 years that we've been operating, and from startup to a fully scale up now, how we have been actually practicing our belief system in that regulation should be part of the product. 5 years ago, we made the decision to absolutely stop and pause our launch until the AML and CTF policies were actually part of legislation. That was a decision that we made because, of course, we were thinking a exchange should have KYC, right? So even from the very first days right up to what we're doing, we're trying to keep up and trying to always update that whole process. And the other, thirdly, right, technology has actually made it more and more easier to be compliant. Just from the word of that KYC, homegrown Aussie products, and this is outside of crypto and blockchain, have made it really accessible to do really high quality KYC and biometrics. So it's actually my opinion that biometrics will become probably the standard for even interacting with any financial service very, very soon. It's been rapid change in that past year with biometrics becoming really accessible. So that's our positioning. It should be part of the core product.
I love it. Speaking of biometrics, Arturo has his thumbprints burned off, so he's all for biometrics. I'm joking, or am I? The next question is pretend I'm a bride and I'm going to throw a bouquet up, so whoever catches it. Weird analogy, I know, but Let's pivot to the topic of real-world asset tokenization. Could you each share some compelling use cases you see on the horizon and how they might revolutionize, I'll get that word out, both the consumer experience and the financial industry? Whoever wants to go first?
Yeah, I'll take this one.
Hang on.
It's all love, folks. It's all love.
It's theatre. You go.
Our stance is pretty much markets are there to provide efficiency of the price discovery. And what we have seen is it took significant amount of time in the history for markets to evolve and get formed. Whereas if anyone have tried creating a Uniswap pool, you take 2 tokens, you set your price range, and you have your market ready. That's very powerful, that you have gone from something taking significant amount of time to ability to create markets. The area which we and a lot of financial players are thinking about is the assets which are very high friction, where there's not a lot of transparencies there in the market and not a lot of liquidity at the moment. They are perfect from the tokenization perspective. So what is public in nature at the moment is we have tokenized carbon credits, and that has definitely helping with price discovery, making that asset accessible to people, and also with settlement with $8 DC, it provides that instantaneous settlement also. So our belief is all the assets which are a bit more high friction assets will be the first to be targeted by many of the players. Lisa?
Oh no, that's awesome, and you know how passionate I am about carbon. And I think from my point of view, it's just the unlimited nature of asset tokenization and the fact that you can tokenize any real world asset And if you can tokenize the cash flow over any real world asset, you can fund it in a different way that is frictionless. And that's what we're kind of obsessed with at DigitalX. And then it comes down to the validation. And our killer use case right now, which is a little bit more from the heart, and literally we call it heart, is working with Bricklet and closing the gap for Australian households who are locked out of the property market. And we've found a way to just get that 20% deposit to them via the fund, so they can buy a house and get a mortgage. And I think that you'll see more and more use cases like that, and I hope that lots of them have positive social impact and create financial inclusion. But just from my point of view, any asset can be tokenized, and I'm excited about that future, as I think so many people in this room are, and I love how we're all working together.
If you've got an asset, we can tokenize it. You heard it here.
Yeah.
Samira.
And fund it.
And fund it, importantly.
Yeah, carbon has been a theme of tonight, and it is a big topic, right? So actually, I learned all of the troubles with the carbon trading from my friend Sam, who's sitting in the audience. I learned it through her because she's actually working on a product called Earth, and they're also trying to tackle this soil carbon trading problem, but then also having the glance of soil biodiversity into that perspective as well. So yeah, it's just adding to that limitless possibility of tokenization. But I'm no expert at what's happening with the carbon world out there, but it really does seem like at the current state, it does need a big change, and blockchain just may be the answer.
Fantastic. And Ed?
I'll keep it simple. Everyone here, most people would sort of aspire to own a home. I find it astonishing we still rely on a piece of paper in a crusty old office somewhere to prove that we own it. Yeah. It's crazy stuff. Then the banks rely on that piece of paper to then register a mortgage. It's so crazy. Like, we've got all this e-conveyancing happening now. In the next 5 years, there must be a way. There must be a way. It can't be that bloody hard that we don't have to rely on a piece of paper in a crusty office. I think this touches, people get so worried about those words KYC. Everyone in this room has been KYC frequently. It's just, I don't want to have to do much to get KYC. That's what it's about. And so I think we're going to find this mainstream uptake of whether it's identification, whether it's those type of assets, but everyday items that we already have that are just great use cases. That's what I'm excited about.
Fantastic. If you've got a phone, it's probably listening to you. Lisa?
I just would not be able to sleep tonight if I didn't use the phrase soul-bound tokens. Yeah.
Who knows what soul-bound tokens are here? Not your soul, not your token. Let's stay over with you, Lisa. I'm here for the dad jokes till Saturday. Lisa, ensuring the safe custody of digital assets is crucial in this dynamic landscape. Could you outline how DigitalX is navigating the terrain amidst constant tech evolution from Nokias to where we are now?
Yeah, well, obviously, I'm dealing with a very public Mt. Gox issue. So we are the experts at knowing what not to do and how to fuck up, basically. And obviously this space is evolving so quickly. I shared earlier in the week that we've had people even imitate our brand to create fake exchanges. And really what we do is, in this current moment in time, we have developed a multi-wallet strategy, and I think that's really the only way to go with the challenges with custody. And every single person that works in our firm, whether they started out as a Web3 person or not, knows how to use a digital wallet, and I really think it's just moving us all up the curve in the security and the custody, because it really is a big deal when you start thinking about being the custodian of shareholder funds, as our balance sheet is, and then in our funds the investor clients. Like, it really is the most important thing, and the thing that we all need to think about. So we partner with Fireblocks, we partner with BitGo, we are running a multi-wallet strategy, and then that's how we approach it, and obviously try to avoid Mt. Gox incidents.
Hands up here who knows what Mt. Gox is. Okay, for those that have their hands up, and those that don't, please ask them. It was a major issue in the crypto space before. And hands up here who has a digital wallet. All right, same thing against the Mountbox people. So, on that note, let's go over to Samira and Anurag. A question for both of you, actually. Look, developing, you can both speak at the same, no, take turns, please. Although karaoke, maybe?
Yeah, that's the same karaoke.
Developing user-friendly yet secure digital wallets, it's a pressing topic in DeFi. Could you each share your insights on this development and its potential impact? Samira, to begin.
Yeah, so wallet history and exchange history are actually really closely intertwined. If you think about the absolute early days, it was burdensome even more burdensome than, if you believe it or not, to hold your own crypto as it is today. So back then, you had to create your own node. My God, why would you do that? And so the platforms that would offer you a wallet were actually exchanges back then. And then of course we see exchanges misusing that privilege to hold your funds in custody. And then wallet providers came about. Wallet infrastructures are so much more accessible than they were once before. And I really think that the accessibility of the wallets is behind some of the booms in crypto that we have seen. And so this is a innovation that all crypto exchanges are closely watching, because it solves the exchange problems as well. Exchanges, especially centralized exchanges, I don't want to speak too much on their behalf, but there is a big burden and it's a financial cost in regards to cybersecurity, the insurance related to it. So they're also watching all of the custody solutions that are coming about for their side. And then obviously on the consumer side, we want to stop having 12 seed phrases now. So it's an innovation that we're all watching very, very closely.
Who remembers their 12-word seed phrase? Anyone? Okay, there's a few of us. That's good. Anurag.
So when, like in Lisa's case, you are custodying assets, so definitely you need to think about the security of those assets. But from our perspective, it's not just holding the assets. If you are an issuer of an asset, you have to think about your deployment strategy. Last thing you want is the wallet, which is deploying a stable coin. There's some developer somewhere in Melbourne or Sydney who has that entire private key of deploying that asset. That's scary. The other dimension is if you are an operator of any digital asset and you're playing multiple roles, minting, burning, all sorts of things you can think about. So having too much power with one of the wallets itself can be very dangerous as well. The third lens, which is also very important, is who are the people who are taking those actions, because at some point of time we need to have an accountability model where who are the people who are in control of this wallet who took any regulatory action, for example. So looking at those scenarios, we have developed a multi-layer strategy for wallets. So first is big segregation. Every single thing, customer fund separate, our fund separate, our operator wallet separate, a big separation. That's basically the first thing which we have done. Second thing which we have done is not relying on one party for holding the private key, and private key is shared into 3 parts, and then we are custodying few of the parts and then few other parts which are at different places. That's all good, but that just answers the problem of no one can steal your funds or can act on your behalf in a malicious manner. I'm very proud to share that as part of the SCRC pilot, there were 13 use case providers and ANZ has provided wallets for 9 of them. And I will not say that's a perfect experience by any stretch, but that's the start, which is where if people want access to a wallet, they don't have to remember that seed phrase or worry about losing their funds. And if they're already trusting a counterparty for the custody of the asset, they should be able to do that. So take big pride in saying that we have reached it.
Fantastic. If innovation was easy, everyone would be doing it. And actually, we are lowering the barriers, so more will.
Could I just say one thing on that? With that DFCRC project, which is incredible, I am also on the commercialization board, and I think more people should be putting in use cases, and there is a fund that will invest in startups for that. So if you're thinking about innovating around that, like give that some thought, because I've only seen 2 people come to us so far, and I'm seriously like, what the hell, like where are all the ideas?
Fantastic. Very important to come see Lisa about that if you've got some ideas or you're working on something. We've got some investment New South Wales folks in space too. So, sorry Lisa?
They'll kill me, but we need more ideas. We need more people coming to us to support
This is a ChatGPT problem if there's too much coming in. It's fine. So, we're good. Ed, over to you. Immutable finds itself on the, it's balancing on the cutting edge of DeFi innovation whilst also upholding stringent compliance and risk management given your role. Could you take us a bit behind the scenes of this delicate balancing act, and where are your private keys held?
Sorry, I can't remember my 12 words, but look, you know what? I think, given what's happened the last 12 months, is that we're, and it's not just us, a lot of starting to see that compliance is a competitive advantage, right? The most compliance will do a good job, and they will find that they will get more deals more often, because the big traditional players out there will go, well, who aren't idiots in the room? Who are actually looking at this in the right way, in the traditional way that maybe the traditional players will go. So for us, that's about, we have external investors. We've got large funds like, Temasek on our cap table. So they have certain expectations about how we run ourselves as a business, that you don't do things without checking first. And if there are red lights, then you don't go. If they're orange or green, then you find a way to get them to green. To use Margaret's analogy earlier today, thank you. And sometimes they are orange, and you make a decision. You go, okay, well, I'm going to run this one, right? And for us, it's having the right people in the right positions. We've got a very senior team, but also we have a big four auditor. Can we trust that? Yes, you can, right? And so it's not. It's for. Run things like you would. I've come from the microcap space as well, in listed lands, and I knew what it was like then, and the scrutiny of governance. We have put in really strong governance as a company. We are too big not to. Our investors expect it, the community expects it, and what we're finding now in the decks that, in the pitches that we're doing, that maybe 12 months ago regulation wasn't there. You know what? Regulation's coming up 3-4 times out of 10 now. And if we don't have a good answer, we won't win the deal, right? And we will find, and we are finding, that being regulated, or looking to regulation, or looking to be compliant and having sound risk management frameworks, will win you more deals. They'll give you more credibility, and that allows you to go mainstream. In absence of that, you always remain in the peripheries, the 1 or 2%, and that may be what you want to do. But if you want to go massive, then you have to do it in the way that everyone expects you to do it.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Let's go over to Lisa. This is a question for all of you, so we'll just go down the line. This is the last question for the panel. Thank you so much for being here. Given that more corporates and institutions are moving into the space, what would you guys say to the community of developers and other folks in Web3 that have been here early, that were already in the space and that feel like the space is maybe changing? It's a bit of a repeat from Arturo's question, but just, the changing of the guard, is it something to be worried about? Is it overhyped? Is this just evolution?
Change is change. I actually, my second fund that I started was called Change Investment Management. And I think embrace it. Through my career, I've done startups, I've worked in big banks, I've worked in small banks. I think that you don't, if you can see the path that isn't yours, and embrace the change, because the large organisations will have budget. If you have a startup, they'll be able to support you. And innovation requires all of us, so don't be intimidated. But my big passion is around the community, and I feel as though let's not lose the community spirit. It doesn't matter how many large organisations come in, let's keep this community and these communities firing, because that's where the innovation happens. And don't be afraid of it, just embrace it, but let's keep this community together.
It's a community, guys.
Few days ago, I wrote a post.
On LinkedIn or Twitter?
On LinkedIn. Few people liked it, few may not. But this is what I said. Monetary Authority of Singapore (MAS) came out with a paper on purpose-driven money. And what's really good about it is it uses all the primitives of DeFi. So they have not gone and said whatever has been done till now is not useful. They have beautifully adopted some of the concepts of here you can take a ERC 1155 which can hold a ERC 20 and you can set rules around how those things can be working with each other. And that's like classic DeFi, which is token interaction for rule-based engines. So from my perspective, like community should celebrate that what they have been building from last, like when Aave was built, who would have thought there will be a trial where JP Morgan will come and take a fork of Aave and do a bond trade. So as long as people are adopting it in its true spirits, community should celebrate it.
We've got amazing stories that are out there. We keep on hearing the negatives, but there are these really, truly groundbreaking, game-changing stories that we need to champion more. So thank you for sharing that post. And do connect with the folks here on LinkedIn, folks. Samira, your thoughts?
Yeah, I want to speak to all of the entrepreneurs out there, the ones that, maybe your idea, you haven't had the confidence yet just to execute on it. That's where I started 5 years ago. We just had this idea there was a very big problem that we wanted to change, and the reasoning for wanting to bring that about was because the industry was changing. So change, there's always a level of opportunity there. We've constantly found more and more opportunity, even from day one to even today. The exchange conversation has just been so interesting for us personally. So that's my advice, is what opportunities are coming out of this particular change in the dynamic of cryptocurrency. Have a think, because there definitely will be.
And embrace it, guys. Ed?
Very quick from me, you're all very smart, use your brains, right? Use your brains, be sensible, be optimistic, and the more things change, the more they stay the same. If I haven't made my point clear tonight, like it's just, the change will still result in more or less the same mainstream applications, so be part of the smart people that help enable that for everyone. That's what we're all here for.
He's absolutely right, you're all very smart, and I expect more of this like networking next, but for now, please thank the panelists and please connect with them on LinkedIn or wherever. We've got one more little thing to go before we get to major networking, so if you can just have a little bit of patience with me. I've got a special surprise. Arturo is back. Come up, Arturo. And I'm going to try to keep this as painless as possible, given that it's him. So now you've got to eat the mic when you talk. So here, give me a test. Say hello.
Are we good?
Yeah. Okay. We good? Okay. So let me just get to the next thing here. Sorry, you get his face. All right. Just so you know who he is. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a story just before we go on. So I run the Aus DeFi Association. I founded that with Arturo. It is a community not-for-profit in 7 cities. It is completely separate to the commercial work that we do. Arturo's wearing the NotCentralised hoodie. NotCentralised is a venture studio. We raise capital in this space. We also work on product stuff like with Peter. That is not Aus DeFi doing that. Completely separate hats or beanies in this sense. Now, we have come from traditional finance. I'm a data scientist by background, so is Arturo. We work in investment banking. The things that really drew us to the space, guys, shh. The things that really drew us to this space were the tools, right, of what could be built. And it's amazing to see what people are doing with all of this stuff. The first thing that was really interesting and innovative to us was the fact that you could have digital escrows. Creating an escrow where if you're a construction company and you want to make sure that someone else actually has the funds to pay you before you pick up your tools, which should be a nice thing, right, is not so easy to do in the real world, yet it's a few lines of code in the world of blockchain. Literally a few lines of code that stop someone from basically running away with money that they promised you in collateral, okay? So we took that and we're part of the RBA pilot and we're doing some interesting things there with a protocol called trade flows, which is for construction, but it doesn't have to be. It could be, imagine you're a consultant, or imagine anyone here who's getting paid by their employer, and you want to understand whether or not the employer has money, right? And you're doing this work for 30 days, and then, like, seriously, we have so much opaqueness in how we do things in the traditional world. The other thing is that the next innovation was that, here's a profound thing, folks. DeFi is regulated. What do I mean by that? DeFi is run by smart contracts. Those smart contracts, if you are not allowed to sell a wholesale security to a retail customer, in the traditional world, you can do that. But in blockchain, if the smart contracts are written the right way, or if there's an ICO and they promise a certain amount of vesting to whatever kind of investor you are, they can't just break that promise. If that is written into the smart contract, it has enforcement there as well. So we found that, and we're doing something with that. This thing that we're going to talk about now, let me describe the problem to you, and this is something that came up from actually doing the RBA pilot, which is why testing and playing around in this space is really, it matters when you get in, the devil is in the details. You won't know about something until you actually get into those lower layers. So imagine that I'm a cafe. It's in the future. It's, I don't know, 2024. And we pay with crypto. They tap their card, and I'm the cafe owner. That person now walks away. They click on Etherscan or Polyscan or whatever it is chain that I'm on, and they can now see my wallet address. It's pseudonymous, OX, blah, blah, blah. But they can see my history. What business wants to be in a space that has that? So when we see a lot of businesses on day one of blockchain week or just around going to push for private blockchains, part of the thing there is that perhaps they're only doing it because there is no other way to keep confidentiality and privacy of, you know, your business transactions. Imagine your competitors knowing who you are and being able to see how much you're spending on certain things. It just doesn't work. And we believe that ZK proofs are the way. ZK proofs have only existed so far on layer 2s, which is essentially putting that into a centralized entity, and you're trusting that that transaction is going to be ZK proof. Hands up here before we go on, who knows what zero knowledge proofs are? There's a few of you out there. It is a mathematical proof that can prove something is valid or not. So imagine you go basically here and you get carded because you're like me, you know, nearly 40 or over 40 and you look 18. Thank you. And you get carded, and right now you give all of your data away, right? They can see that, you see your name, address, date of birth and all that. Well, in the ZK proof world, you only have to share a tick box or only the date of birth or only certain information, and nothing else gets leaked. Now, it's been great innovation, and we need ZKs to go further, but it's been a problem because they're not easy to deploy, and they've only really existed on layer 2s. So with that, we have a surprise for you. Arturo is going to talk to you about something that we've created here, and it is for the community. It is open source.
Fuck, that was the longest intro ever.
I know.
I need to wake these fuckers up. Honestly. Okay, so what are we doing here? We're not talking about regulation. What regulation?
I think we're done with that.
I think we are. I think we're done with that topic. I think that the only final note I'd say is that there's a lot of really shit advice out there. If you're asking for any advice and they tell you that you don't need to worry too much, ask them what it would look like if you actually ran a security. And the differential between those two answers, that's the risk you're carrying.
There are better lawyers out there, and some of them are in this room, so, yeah.
Anyway, when we got into this space, I think that the biggest reason we got into this space was because there was so much weird and wonderful ideas being built from the community. The barriers to entry were really, really low. Now, they weren't super low when it came to the tech, but nevertheless, we saw incredible things being innovated. Now, I kind of fell into the topic of ZKs while we were doing the RBA pilot because of all of the reasons that Mark just mentioned. And we thought, you know what? ZKs are a magical technology, but they're actually really difficult to implement. So let's take all these different things that we've done for various different projects, let's make an SDK, let's make it simple for people to access. And this is what we have. So, what is it that we care about when it comes to Web3 if we are not talking about DeFi and transferring tokens back and forth? i.e. valid, and creating shit tokens. We care about self-sovereignty. Now, what that means is that we're able to create workflows where we actually control most of the part of that workflow that is relevant to us. And in a technological sense, a lot of that comes down to where are the keys held. So in this slide here, the traditional sense the traditional way in which technology usually is built is that you have one server or a few of them, but you have a centralized entity that actually keeps track of those keys and becomes an attack vector, or it becomes an entity that can actually control the way in which your data flows, right? Or your money, your tokens.
Medibank, Optus, other places that are centralized and can be hacked.
What we learned from blockchains was how to build peer-to-peer networks. And peer-to-peer networks, if you build them properly, are networks where you effectively only have your key in one place, and then you engage with all of these distributed systems in a really safe way. Let's go to the next one. Now, where ZK proofs come to play is that magically, when you're communicating between these two systems, you don't actually have to transfer information or clean data. Bear in mind that sure you have SSL and so forth, so I'm connecting to a web server. Communication is encrypted, but I'm still sharing that communication. With ZKs, that's not the case. I'm actually not sharing the information per se. I'm just sharing a statement that the information conforms to a certain criteria, which is quite a special thing, and it effectively mitigates the data footprint of whatever it is that you're doing, i.e. it mitigates the risk of data breaches of many banks and so forth. So from our point of view, when you're building something, you want to be using peer-to-peer where possible. And the reason for that is because you don't want to be beholden to somebody paying their AWS bills, right? You use encryption where possible, but also you use ZKs where possible, because ZKs, unlike encryption, actually enable you to not share data, but still share relevant information in the form of consistencies or criteria, let's put it that way. So, in this SDK that is open for everyone, it's all open source, as we said, on my MIT license for those who care. It's properly open source. We've done a few different things. First of all, we created a workflow, and this is a visual representation of that workflow, where we can effectively create a deal, let's say a term sheet. That term sheet gets transformed into an NFT. And when the person on the other side, think of it as a bilateral trade, is going to agree to this term sheet, what they do is that they agree to a custom function in the NFT. Then, when they agree to the terms in this deal, if the deal has a minimum amount for you to agree, i.e. that initial collateral, then that initial collateral gets locked in. And all of this happens in a confidential way. So where the ZKs come in is that in a traditional ERC20 token, when I transfer money, then the smart contract is the one that updates all of the balances. It's a synchronous transfer. In this case, what we did was that all of the calculations, let's say, of keeping the ledgers in place happens off-chain. And the smart contract, what it does is that it makes sure that when you submit the changes of these transactions, what you submit is a hash together with a ZK proof that basically says that you're good to go, i.e. you're not spending more than you should, so on and so forth. When you deal with this SDK, you don't really need to think about those details. All you do is code in standard JavaScript and you're good to go.
So a business could use this and know that if they're using it this way, they're not going to be seen. There's a valid transaction on Etherscan, Polyscan, heck, even the layer 2 scanners and stuff, but you're not going to see the transaction amount, only those privy to the transaction, just like what we've got in real world business right now. So it's blockchain rails and efficiencies, but with the confidentiality that we have right now.
Let me just riff on that for a sec. We hear a lot about confidentiality with L2s. That's a really questionable topic because sure, you don't have visibility from L1 into L2, but when you're in the L2, then if there's an ether scan, you can see everything that's happening in there. In this scenario, confidentiality is on a bilateral basis. So only I would know how much I have in my balance, because this is an L1 transaction. He knows what he has in his balance, and only him and I know how much I'm transferring to him. Nobody else does, which is a pretty big difference. Second of all, we have IPFS, which is a beautiful technology, but it's actually, it's not easy to create a nice user experience with it, because it's not super reactive. And on top of that, anybody can see what you're saving onto IPFS. Now, we go back to the concept of self-sovereignty and peer-to-peer systems. So we think that you should be using IPFS, but you need to do so carefully. You need to encrypt everything that you push up to IPFS. And you do so, you use it because, again, you don't want to be beholden to somebody paying their AWS bills. But what we did was just created really easy to use workflows so that every time you upload a file, a new key gets created, you're encrypting all the time. So as soon as the file, the information leaves your browser, it's in an encrypted form. Again, that's actually no rocket science, but it's just good practice that people that are not used to using encryption should follow, and we just did that for them.
It's like VPN, folks, if you want to steal Netflix from another place, yeah, anyway.
Now, finally, or almost finally.
Second last finally, we created, again, this is a visual representation. This is all based on APIs. We created an embodiment, let's put it that way, of something that a lot of people talk about, which is verifiable credentials, but it's actually quite hard to find a functional verifiable credential framework out there that is not fully commercialized and therefore not fully open source. So, in this scenario, what we're showing is that we can actually issue a credential. And that credential could be a passport, it could be a term sheet, it could be anything that is verified, let's put it that way. And when it gets created as a credential, it also gets created as an encrypted file. And the point of this exercise is that we can actually prove features about this file without sharing that content, i.e. this is where the ZK part comes in. So we issue a passport. Obviously we can do that passport. We create a query about the passport. So in this case, what I'm showing is that all we want to see is that the age of this person or the date of birth is between two specific dates, and we want to verify the country. Imagine I'm customs and I'm letting Arturo in or not to my country.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Once I've been able to create that query, I need to choose which credential I want to prove this query with. Here we go. So I'm scanning QR code, scanning this query. I see, okay, this is what they want to know about me. It's my choice if I want to share that information or not, i.e. here's where the self-sovereignty of the data comes in. There's no centralized server in this environment. And I generate that proof, which I then can verify. Now, we showed the case of a passport. You can create a term sheet, for example, and you can prove that a specific clause exists within that term sheet without actually sharing the term sheet. So again, this is a tool for developers so that you can actually go out and go nuts, create your own, next unicorn. Just don't worry too much about the ZK stuff because you don't really need to. You should care about your business model.
We don't worry about Linux, and yet we use mobile phones, and there's a whole heap of Linux underneath it. This is just Rails, folks. So it's all about easy to use. Last one, which is the most boring one, but I find the most interesting one. Of course he does.
How many of you have heard of the topic of a service bus?
Sadly.
Okay, we have a few nerds here. Good. A service bus is something that every system uses. It's basically it's a piece of software that acts like a mailbox, and it takes in a bunch of messages from other systems, which is probably the reason why you don't know what it is. Again, everybody uses it. Now, what we've done is that we've created a service bus through a smart contract. Now, the reason why that's important is because a smart contract living on a blockchain is something that you can actually audit. Now, creating an auditable workflow on a traditional system is really, really difficult. Imagine if you're setting up your own AWS environment or Azure or whatever it is, and you want people to be able to audit it. And you want to be able to show that the data has not been tampered with. That's really tricky.
I can just send a TXT file of the logs and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
You just got to trust me, bro.
Exactly. So here's the trust element, right? That's kind of what we've solved with blockchain. It's just that we focused on tokens instead of focusing on other stuff as well, right? Again, mainstream of blockchain doesn't mean that everybody's sending each other Dogecoin, right? It's about usage of blockchain itself. This is a really good example because in this case, what I can do is that I can prove the source of the message. I can prove that the timestamp of the message has actually not been tampered with because this thing is immutable. And third of all, which is the thing that we added on top of it, is that if you're pushing in a message, we can make sure that that smart contract only accepts a message if it conforms to certain criteria, which means that we can actually have private information being pushed onto a ledger, a public ledger, so that anybody can audit the features of that ledger without actually sharing the private information, which is a pretty important thing. It's a big step. Again, it's all open source. We have set up a set of APIs in closed beta for people to get API keys if they want to have our help with hosting. A few other things that need to be hosted in terms of this, but if you want to just run it all on your own and you want to deploy your own smart contract and so forth, then you're free to do so.
This is the best of both worlds, folks. So, this is how we actually get more businesses inside here, because we've actually got rails that keep them confidential, private, not just for businesses, even individuals and stuff. You want to be private and not tornado cache everything. Good luck. This could be a way to do that.
I mean, it even goes into tokenization of assets. Lots of companies, lots of platforms are tokenizing assets and they have their own nice platforms, but most of them are actually transparent, which means that when you put them out to work, they are not, you can't run commercial businesses on them. In this case, you can actually hide all of that stuff, and all of a sudden it becomes usable or commercially friendly. Let's put it that way.
The final one is that I'd love your support, because I finally purchased Twitter Blue Premium, or whatever you call it, like one of the nerds, which means I can put longer videos out there, I can put longer posts. I wrote at Vitalik, but I would love your support, so please find that Uncapped DeFi on Twitter. But this is Aussie innovation, and I would love to work with the other builders in this space, whatever you're doing. Whether you or not you know how to do this, or whether or not the words that Arturo said made sense, I run them through ChatGPT afterwards. That's the only way I understand him. But if it did or did not make sense to you, either way, come talk to us, because we're very interested in how we can use primitives and tools like this and even develop something further. All this development comes from being involved in this amazing community. We really thank you for sticking around and being patient with us. We'll get to networking and stuff now. But before we go, I want to say thank you to all of our sponsors that have been around, Adelaide and all the Sensand crew here. Hands up who's here from Sensand, come on. Get your hands up, all the amazing folks. And please do networking continue, and our QR code is there if you want to find out more Aus DeFi information. Thank you very much, Melbourne. We will be back.